Hi guys, I am kicking off the first video on my first series on my YouTube channel, and this first series is going to be on family systems. I'm going to start off with a quote by an author and a doctor named Gabor Mate. He works with trauma and addiction. His quote is, "As a rule, whatever we don't deal with in our lives, we pass on to our children. Our unfinished emotional business becomes theirs." This has always stuck out to me because sometimes as a therapist, people ask me for parenting advice, and the biggest thing I always tell them is do your own work. Because the family systems are so powerful, in what we have and who we are gets passed on to our kids, not just genetically, but just systemically, so much that when we work on ourselves, it improves the lives of our children as well, and our children's children. So family systems began, especially in the context of therapy, began around the time of, in 1940, there was something called the Macy Conference. It was a national conference where scholars from all across the nation, scientists, researchers came together to discuss ideas that they were learning. Their findings brought to light this whole idea of systems, and how all over the place, our human body, the cells, our cells, nations, social groups, even self-guided missiles they were developing at that certain time, all operated on these similar systems principles. And they all had these common factors in how systems worked and played together. And what came out of that was a guy named Gregory Bateson studying all of this and sort of turning it to the idea of therapy and family therapy, on how the family as a system affects individual clients. So basically he was a communications expert, and one of the things he did was he worked with patients who suffer from schizophrenia. But what he found was, as his patients got better and were sent home to their families of origin where they grew up, they sort of regressed and ended up with worse symptoms and ended up right back in his care again. And he started to wonder, what is it about the family systems that is throwing these people back into their symptoms? And that's what he discovered. He decided to see whole families together and see the interplay between them, and he spent decades researching how families communicate and how that affects people, and that sort of was the initial epicenter to all these studies on families that turned into family therapy of all different kinds. So one of the big ideas that come out of this movement was the idea of linear versus circular causality. Basically what it means is it's not always one person's fault why something happens. Circular causality looks a lot like Jack does X, so Jill does Y because of it, and Jill does Y, so Jack does X because of it. Does that make sense? So kind of one person does something that affects somebody else, that person does something and that affects this person, and so it's this back and forth cycle. It's never one person's fault. Our families are very complex systems, and that's full of this circular causality that's really hard to even see. You have probably recognized this in your own family, how the interplay between people works out is if you tried to do something different than normally is done in your family. For example, if you dated somebody that they didn't agree with, if all of a sudden you had a different political opinion than your family had. When that happens, there's this force called homeostasis that's basically a force that wants the system to go back to normal. So an example of this in a non-family systems context is our body temperature. Something simple as that. It's supposed to stay at 98.6 degrees. So when we start to get hot, we sweat to cool it down. When our body starts to get cold, we shiver to warm it back up again. And that's this force of homeostasis, trying to get the system of our body temperature regulated back to normal. The same thing exists in our families. Gregory Bateson said that in terms of family systems, homeostasis is a unique set of behavioral, emotional, and interactional norms that create stability for the family or social group. So basically, in the same way that our body regulates our body temperature back to normal, the family system always wants to regulate back to this normal sense of how things always are. And that is a really strong force, stronger than most people realize. So think about it like this. If you're this cog in your family machine, you play your role, and everybody interacts with all these different parts together. And if you start to shift what you do, it throws off the whole system, and nobody knows how to react. And there's that homeostasis comes in to sort of try to bring things back to normal. And it's not necessarily something that your family is intentionally doing, but when they feel you doing something different, they automatically have this sense of, we need to make things go back to normal because that's comfortable and that's the way things are. I'm sure if you start to ask yourself and look at your own family, you'll see this all the time. So homeostasis itself is not a bad thing. It keeps our bodies regulated, it keeps things normal, it keeps systems chugging along. But as human beings, we have such an incredible desire to be known and seen and loved. And so when our own desires feel counter to being seen, and when we express our own desires to in our family system and we feel that pushback, it's really difficult to react well. Some people shut down and decide to just not have that opinion and just go along with the group. Some people may just completely rebel and go way in the opposite direction because they don't really know how to react. So when you decide to do something different or express a desire for something that your family isn't used to, you feel that sense of uncomfortableness. Your family they just get uncomfortable and they don't know how to react around you anymore. When we begin to sacrifice ourselves for that sense of belonging, or go way out of the blue and do like really different things because we can't handle that force. Whether we do either one of those things or anything in between, we're not being our authentic selves. We're not staying true to who we are and who we want to be, and we're pretending to be somebody else just for the sake of keeping the system the same. So doing this work and learning about your family, this all matters because whether you know it or not, you are reacting within this family system of yours. So many people get to what they say, I'm never going to do what my dad did to me. I'm never going to treat my wife like my dad treated my mom. We say those over and over again, and then when we're grown up, we have kids, we have a wife, we find ourselves in these eerily similar systems. It doesn't look the same, they're different names, different people, but we do the same things. We do the same things that we didn't want to do because that force of keeping the system the same is so ingrained in us and who we are that we don't know how to do anything different. But if you were to take a step back and look at how you were raised and look into those things and see the system that you're a part of and the desires that you have and how they're connected to that, only then are you really able to make a change and do something different. And that's what a lot of people want to do. People come and see me because they want to do things different and they don't know how. They have no idea. They try and they fail. They want to be one way, but every time they take a step back, they're doing exactly what they don't want to do. It's so important, I think, to look into these concepts because trying to grow and improve yourself without taking a look at the family system that you came from is it's like having one foot on the gas and the other foot on the brake, I think. So in my next video, I'll be talking more about this and talking about sort of how to maybe fight against this homeostasis when it's in an unhealthy place. And even I'll talk about sort of warning signs to look at when you're seeing that things are unhealthy in your family systems and how to cultivate that maybe positive level of differentiation that can help you be yourself and be a part of your family group in a healthy way. I look forward to that video, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.